Welcome to This Week in Health IT, where we discuss the news, information, and emerging thought with leaders from across the healthcare industry. This is episode number 53. Last week I said 51. I was wrong. This is why I need an admin. This is the second of the special year-end in review or year-in-review episodes. Last week was the innovators. This week is the clinicians. Next week will be the CIOs, and then finally we're going to end out the year with a top 10 episode. A little Casey Kasem going on here of what are the best videos and snippets from This Week in Health IT this year. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. I'm enjoying just going back and listening to some of these great leaders just sharing their experience and their wisdom. This podcast is brought to you by Health Lyrics. Be a market leader. We help you to clarify your health IT plan, eliminate confusion, align your work, experience breakthroughs. Visit healthlyrics.com to schedule your free consultation. My name is Bill Russell, recovering healthcare CIO, writer, and advisor with the previously mentioned Health Lyrics. And here we go. All right. So without further ado, I do want to keep giving you a little bit of background on the show this year. And just what an experience it has been. So this is the 53rd episode. Most of the shows have been done right here in beautiful Southern California, but from time to time you'll hear the different glitches, different background, and that kind of stuff. It was a busy travel year for me. We've done episodes literally all over the country. I've done an episode in Philadelphia, 2 in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, 1 in Chicago, 2 in Chicago. We did down in up in San Francisco. We did I know we've done a couple others in other cities in the Midwest. We did 2 in St. Louis, now that I think about it. In fact, that was probably the most difficult episodes to do. I was in a Drury Inn in St. Charles, Missouri. That was a time where I was actually helping to rehab my daughter's first home, and this hotel did not have the best internet connection. So did 2 episodes there, and it was a little spotty, but we got through it. And I believe I did 1 in Texas as well. And definitely 1 in Arizona last year at the Scottsdale Institute conference. I did an episode from the back porch of the wonderful hotel that we were at. So yeah, we've been around the country doing this thing. It really has been a joy. We continue to do it for the next generation of health IT leaders. And if you agree that the content is valuable, I'm going to probably make this just a part of the intro for the coming year. But please share it with somebody. Please, find somebody that you think would benefit from hearing from great leaders about what's going on in healthcare and how to think about it, and share the episode with them. And we look forward to producing some new episodes in the coming year. All right. So without any further ado, we're gonna kick this off. We have the clinicians episode. So we've had a lot of clinicians on the show this year. Specifically, we're going to highlight a handful of them. Dr. David Benzema, I think has been on the most of anybody. I think he's on 3 times, and I really appreciate him. The first time he was on, it was we had the start of a relationship. We really struck it, really connected on a lot of different levels. I had him on the show, and then through a scheduling snafu, mostly on my part, did I mention I really need an admin? He was booked like 3 weeks later or 4 weeks later. So we somehow got through that, and he was kind enough later on in the year when I had somebody drop because their schedule couldn't accommodate it. He came back on. I love his insights because he was a CIO, CMIO, and a practicing physician. So we got into some deep things with him, which was phenomenal. I'm trying to think who else we're going to highlight. Dr. Daniel Kraft, also on the Innovators episode, is also on this episode. We have Lee Milligan, CMIO out of Asante in the Great Northwest. He was another phenomenal interview with me. I learned a ton from him. John Halamka, as I mentioned in the last episode, John somehow has made it onto all four. He eked in with a top 10. He's a clinician, he's an innovator, and he's a CIO. So he got in there. And I cannot forget Rod Hochman. Dr. Rod Hochman is also on this show, and we talk about the competitive landscape with him. And that was a phenomenal time as well. And finally, to round out this, Dr. Anthony Chang came on, and he has so many credentials behind his name. He is a chief intelligence innovation type guy for the Sharon Disney Lund Medical Institute. He's also heading up AI Med with conferences around the world, and he came on and talked about artificial intelligence. So that's the game. Oh, you know who else I forgot? Amy Maneker is on this episode as well. Amy was introduced to me. She's one of the Starbridge advisors. Starbridge advisors. Yeah, you get the picture. She had just recently joined them, and she was on the show as well. And we had a phenomenal conversation. And we talked a lot about informatics. We talked a lot about EHR programs. So this is a great episode. Just really good content from these clinical leaders. And I look forward to just diving in. So the first clip here is with Dr. David Benzema. He's going to talk about health IT and what health IT, from a physician perspective, what he wishes every CIO and healthcare organization would hear from their physician partners. So here's our first clip. Let's assume right now you're able to, on this podcast, every IT person in the country is going to be tuning in. What's the one thing you would tell all these IT people that they need to hear from a practicing physician that they may or may not really appreciate or understand?
When I ask for customization or personalization, please understand that it's driven by my customized, unique patients. Every patient is special. Every patient comes a little bit different. I don't get the opportunity to have a standard patient interaction. Every patient comes with their own needs and expectations. I'm trying as a clinician to adapt to that and to provide the most personalized care that I can, the most focused care that I can to that patient. That sometimes causes me ask IT to do things that IT really can't. So hear me with empathy and explain to me in a way that I can understand how you can get close through personalization, how I can learn other workflows in the EHR, but don't tell me no. No's the wrong answer. It's, have you thought about this? Have you done this? Because I need to, as a physician, to tell you every one of the patients I deal with is special.
Yeah, and I think there's such wisdom in what Dr. Benzema is saying here, which is empathy, right? Put yourself in their shoes and understand, how the technology is impacting the clinicians. I think that is, it's fantastic words to live by for anybody in the IT space, anybody in the digital space as well. Our next clip is Dr. Anthony Chang, who I talked about a little earlier, AI Med, artificial intelligence expert, went to Stanford, literally has so many degrees, 3 or 4 advanced degrees, went back to Stanford to get his degree in artificial intelligence, also practicing pediatrician, and has his MBA as well. So great insights from him on the promise of artificial intelligence. And I pulled this clip because I just think it's coming, and it's great to hear a physician's perspective on the promise of artificial intelligence. So here's our next clip. Let's start at the beginning. What's the promise of AI? Why are you so excited about it? Why are you looking at it?
Well, I think after 4 years of education, I realized that it's kind of like wearing a different lens and looking at the world. You see so many little places where data science or computer programming can really make impact. And if you think about our world in general, so many facets of our life are already being replaced by automation. how we order books and how we get referred books. It's all algorithm driven. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. How we have now autonomous driving vehicles now at least in the picture. And I think 10 years ago, if you were to ask people, do you think there will be autonomous driving vehicles? And everyone would be thinking this is like 20, 30, 40 years down the road.
Right.
But it's not uncommon to see one in Silicon Valley now. And I think there's so many aspects. And then it was February 14th, 2011, Valentine's Day, so it's a special day for cardiologists, that the human contestants were beaten soundly by the supercomputer Watson from IBM. And that was the night that I downloaded the application for the data science and AI program at Stanford. I realized that this time AI is here, and it's probably going to be here for a long time.
Yeah, it's artificial intelligence is right around the corner. In that episode, we also talked about it's going to be applied in a lot of places before it really permeates the clinical environment. But we're getting our feet wet. We're seeing it with RPA, and we're seeing some real advancements there. We're seeing it applied to supply chain. We're seeing it applied to revenue cycle, AI and security. We're seeing it applied. Artificial intelligence will be the talk of the town. That is not going away anytime soon. Okay, our next clip, we're gonna go right back to, let's see, Dr. Bensma. We'll go right back to him, and I posed this question to him: how would the physicians change the EHR if it were possible? So let's just take a listen at some of his thoughts on how the physicians would change the EHR if it was possible. If you had the power, what changes would you make to the EHR to make life easier for physicians?
Oh, this is one of my favorite subjects. In fact, I was talking with Dr. Brett Oliver, who replaced me as CMIO. I had the dual role, and Brett became the CMIO as I left, while Trisha Julian became the CIO. Brett's a voice you ought to hear. Brett is a phenomenal voice, but first and foremost, the things that are immediately achievable is voice recognition for order entry and notes, so that we can get so many of our colleagues who struggle with the keyboard off of it and speed the order process. Another area would be to enable, how do I say this? Better exchange, which actually requires that we tell the EHR providers that you have to have the standard format and the process. Interoperability is only going to happen with a deadline and with some mandates. The EHR manufacturers and systems that like to protect their data are not going to come to the table until there's those two pressures, time pressure and mandated structure. That's critical for exchanging patient data, so in a meaningful way, so that the physicians can use it within their workflow, as opposed to looking at horrible line after line after line of some of the formats that we've seen. And then third, and this one's kind of conjecture, it's a little aspirational, not quite ready yet, but get the analytics, get the artificial intelligence thoughtfully built in with input from physicians. This time around, let's not build it and then put it in front of physicians and say, use it. Let's get the physicians to help us build it, get that artificial intelligence in place, and create the ability to say, you cannot be as good a physician as you want to be without your EHR. Because for precision medicine, for all the things we want to move through population health, you can't do that without an EHR. I can't carry that data in my head. You and I can memorize a lot of things. We're talking to a very smart audience. They can memorize a lot of things. They can carry a lot of information. Can't carry all of it. So we need the help of the augmented intelligence, of the artificial intelligence. We need that, but we need it in a way that we can say, you can't be as good a physician as you want to be without it.
Yeah, again, great insight. Put yourself in their shoes is more than just talking about putting yourself in their shoes or just talking about empathy, but walk around with them, see the need for getting that information into their workflow. I think we all know that it's another thing to watch it and to round. And I know some of the more successful CIOs are a part of the rounding process, and they spend a lot of time with clinicians to understand. And they also understand the burden that the clinicians are under, and they've prioritized the things that would really alleviate that burden. So again, great insights from Dr. Benzema, and always appreciate him coming on the show. Our next clip, I'm gonna head over to Lee Milligan, CMIO for Sante. And, we open up the show every week with a softball question, and just a, what are you working on? What are you excited about? And the reason we do that is just to give them a platform to talk about different things. And it has amazed me how just diverse the answers are. Sometimes people talk about work. Sometimes they don't talk about work. Sometimes people talk about their family. It's just different things that are going on. Lee just jumped right in and started talking about removing friction from healthcare. And he's so articulate and so smart. So I really appreciated his insights. Take a listen. So one of the things we like to do is just ask our guests, what they're excited about, what they're working on today. And really, I'm just going to turn the floor over to you and talk about whatever has your interest right now.
Okay. There's a lot of things on the plate and a lot that hold my interest, but I would say in general, the theme of minimizing friction is top of the list. Right. And that could be patient friction. Near and dear to my heart is provider friction. And one of the ways that we're looking at doing that is really improving voice recognition. So, we've used voice recognition up till now, but we haven't really gone further than a kind of a superficial utilization of it. I would love to get to the space where eventually we're using voice recognition to do all of our navigation throughout the electronic health record. We could just simply say, pull up chart review, pull out all the CTs of the head in the last 3 years and list them for me, and then you can see them beautifully. I think we're on the cusp of getting there, but not quite. But that's really what gets me motivated right now, is that voice recognition and NLP world that we're heading into.
And so we've been doing charting and notes for a while within Nuance. I think we were doing that probably 5 or 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. But now when we get to navigation, I mean, it really becomes more of a Star Trek kind of thing where you just, hey, computer, tell me what the vitals are for this patient. Hey, computer, that kind of stuff. And yeah.
And I think that's a good point. And I think, that's where we get over that hump of us working for the computer versus the computer working for us. Yeah. I think the first couple of years we were on the EHR, really, we felt like we were all data entry monkeys putting stuff into the computer, and it wasn't really doing much for us. What you just described, in my mind, is really the computer flipping that and now working for us.
Isn't that a great quote? Us, or the computer working for us instead of us working for the computer. That is such a great quote, and that is that's the promise of technology in healthcare. And removing the friction. He talked an awful lot about removing it from the clinician side. And you can imagine, you just close your eyes and imagine Star Trek. And, when they talk to the computer and they say, hey, computer, give me the coordinates, beam me down, do this, do that. Clearly, there's still people doing work across the Starship Enterprise, but the interaction with computers changes everything, especially when we simplify that process. Okay, where am I going to go next? Let's go to, let's give John Halomka. Let's go there. So John shared so many great anecdotes and stories. This one is about Amazon machine learning at work in healthcare. And John is so pragmatic, which is what I love about him, that he just says, what's the problem? Here's the different ways we can solve the problem, and then he solves the problem. He's not looking to prove that cloud is better than on-prem or whatever. He's very practical, and this is another case of that. So take a listen to this case study of how Amazon machine learning is being used at Beth Israel Deaconess.
I know this is going to sound like the Gartner hype curve, right? But I thought the theme of HIMSS in 2018 was machine learning. Right. And you have to be careful. What is machine learning? It's not, Watson is going to replace doctors. I mean, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about boring, prosaic stuff. And let me give you an example of what I went live with yesterday. Now, I hope you've never had to have surgery, but if you've ever had surgery, the doctor can't put a knife in you without a consent. I mean, you were a CIO. You know what a nightmare it is to track down thousands of pieces of paper coming from doctors' offices all over humanity with a handwritten wet signature on consent.
Right.
And so fine, you digitize this or that and you have e-consent. It's just still a nightmare. So what do? We asked Amazon to monitor our fax machines. Now, what's that all about? We trained Amazon machine learning services to recognize consent forms. And so what happens, this is literally the application. Amazon is a listener on our fax traffic, and when it sees a consent form, it knows how to identify the patient on the consent form, and then writes via a Fire API a checkbox into the EHR that says consent received. That's all it does. So, wow, suddenly no armies of humans searching stacks of paper, and Amazon just does it for us with 99.9% sensitivity and positive predictive value.
Sometimes, first of all, John is so articulate. I just love him. But sometimes his solutions are so simple that you sit there and you just want to smack yourself on the side of the head and say, why didn't I think of that? And it's a great little solution using NLP, identifying the consent forms, putting a little checkbox in using Fire. It's that kind of stuff that may not win you awards or those kind of things, but gosh, you start stacking those things up, they make a huge difference in terms of overall efficiency and productivity of the physician. So, kudos to John. I really appreciate him sharing that. Let's see. Let's go to Dr. Benzema. I give him a lot of time on here, mostly because he was on 3 times this year and had a lot of great things to say. In this clip, we take a look at the future of the CMIO role. David had written an article, and I wanted him to share some of his insights. So take a listen to this.
Try to take a look into the future regarding CMIO roles because of my kind of unusual perspective on things. And so I started thinking through this, and what I realized is we are in a world of specialists, and we tend to become focused on our specialty. And I wanted to direct CMIOs in particular, though I think it's valuable to all leaders, to become a generalist in your knowledge and a specialist in your focus on the population or the team or the group that you are serving. And so my push for CMIOs was really more about them becoming more diverse in their knowledge base, to read about finance and to read about nursing, to read about business operations, to make sure that they understood the needs of their customers, because the whole healthcare system is the customer of the CIO and the CMIO, but to know their needs and then be able to anticipate where that puck is going so they can be more useful. The other thing that I see for CMIOs is the need to take what is already a physician advantage, the integrative mindset. We listen to disparate information coming from the patient. We have the chart, we have labs. We take all that disparate information, we integrate it into a differential, and then we test our hypothesis and make rapid course corrections to arrive at the correct diagnoses and treatment plan. Well, that's integrative thinking. If we can apply that to the rest of the healthcare system and to our interactions with the healthcare system, we will be more useful. And then finally, really develop your skills and strategy and ensure that you are in a position to influence strategy and have a deep knowledge of what the system strategy is. So whenever folks are coming with the bright and shinies, you can point them back to the system strategy. Is this really helping us move forward? Is this in the same vector direction as our strategy, or am I pulling energy in another vector direction? Because if I'm starting to pull in multiple directions, and I know, the cart doesn't move very fast forward, and in fact, usually gets tipped over.
Wow, what great insights from Dr. Benzema. Yeah, I mean, this is just a continuing trend. You're starting to see clinicians go into the technology area. You have clinician builders working in the EHR, clinicians going into analytics, clinicians going into the business in the C-suite. And recurring theme on the show, and exciting theme. So, in fact, to continue on with that theme, Amy Maneker and I sat down. Amy Maneker, a CMIO for Starbridge Advisors, discussed the key roles and talent in clinical informatics teams. And one of the first things she drives home is the need to recruit qualified physicians and good physicians and clinicians to be a part of your clinical informatics team. So take a listen at this. You built out a clinical informatics teams. What are some of the key roles that you had to fill, and where'd you find that talent?
So I'm going to talk about the physicians. There are some other key roles. You need to draft physician informaticists, and I would offer that the vast majority of the time you have to train them or find training for them. So often you have to find them from within your organization because of my informatics team they were part-time informatics and the majority time clinical. So you have to draft them. And you don't want, and I think the answer is you want to recruit them because you actually don't want to draft them. You want volunteers. You don't want people who are drafted, quite frankly. I used the wrong term. So you really get the message out there that it's an opportunity, and it's not the technology. You get people to understand that it's really a quality and process improvement tool, and then train them in informatics. And I think you'd be amazed about how many bright docs really do want to improve quality and process. And I think that's the hook. And the guy who walks into my office, and this would happen to me, hey, I know SQL code. I'm like, congratulations. Was less likely to be a good fit for the team than the person who said, hey, I have all these ideas how we could be doing better care. And then introduce them, hey, here's the tool how to do it. Because it really is a tool to improve quality and value of healthcare. And then it's creating a team and really teaching everyone informatics and the verbiage. And then also teaching them, they have to understand whatever your EMR is better, because they need to be able to know the language to be able to speak to the analyst. And then they can speak medicalese and they can resonate with the other clinicians, docs, nurses, whoever, and they can speak to the analyst team. And then they can make things happen.
Yeah, great insights from Amy. Looking forward to having her on the show in the future. Haven't set the slate of candidates for 2019 yet, but looking forward to having some of these just talented people back on the show. Speaking of talented people, the next clip's from probably one of the highest ranking people we've had on the show, Dr. Rod Hochman, President and CEO of Providence St. Joseph Health, and I love his insights into this challenge that's facing healthcare, which is, the competitive landscape continues to shift, and you have new partnerships, new models that continue to pop up, and Rod is one of those people that believes that that traditional healthcare is going to be able to compete in this environment, and he is investing in digital, he's investing in new business models, and take a listen to this and how the traditional providers remain competitive in this changing landscape. Healthcare Leaders article, you said we're deconstructing the traditional health system. We've been built around large hospitals. That's an old version of a successful health system, or soon will be. Our new plan makes us more digital, more ambulatory, and there's less emphasis on the hospital as the core. And this goes back to something we talked about earlier, where you have health systems that have really pushed out into the community. They've deconstructed their buildings and really put labor and delivery. They put these really facilities all over the city. But this isn't the end of deconstruction, is it? I mean, digital technologies, the consumer revolution, new paradigms for delivery of care. We're going to see much more deconstruction moving forward. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think the only way for us to compete in the market that we're in, how do you compete against a national ambulatory surgery company? Well, if every ambulatory surgery center you have is part of a hospital in a community somewhere, you're not going to be competitive. So what we've said is that we've got to bring all of those units together. So the ambulatory division, well, 7 states, then allows us to function more as a business in the ambulatory space than an add-on to an acute care facility. Now, the same way I'd say the acute care facilities need to tighten up how they work. They've got to get streamlined, better, smarter, faster as well. But they need to concentrate on acute care in those facilities. The medical group needs to really function as a medical group across 7 states. That's a different type of delivery of care that has probably a digital arm to it, but it also has to be much more community-based than before. So really taking apart those. Then the other thing for Providence St. Joseph is also becoming a services company. We're taking a page out of what Optum did, right? We got to optimize Providence St. Joseph. So we, in addition to our scale, have to become a services company to medical groups, to other hospitals. We're, as you know, we're supplying EMRs to other hospitals that we don't own, and we're doing that work. I think we're going to have to figure out ways to produce revenue from things other than direct patient care.
Yeah, I love Rod's perspective. Essentially, you're gonna break the traditional health system down into its component parts, and you're gonna rebuild it for a different model, for a digital model, or for whatever model there is in the future. And it might be you're redesigning it for 2018. You might need to redesign it again for 2021 and 2023. That's the pace of digital. And, it probably sets up our next video pretty well. The pace of digital is one that moves very rapidly and will require some new skill sets for us as healthcare organizations. And Lee Milligan talks about really applying lean and agile. Lean isn't new, but agile is something that we're starting to see pop up in a lot of health systems. And, it's iterative, it's short sprints, defined deliverables. It's not a big design build kind of concept, but just iterative successes building upon each other. And this is a skill we're going to see, and we're hearing this over and over again, especially as healthcare becomes digital and they start to build out digital capabilities. So here, take a listen to Lee Milligan talking about lean and agile in analytics programs. How do you scale this? So you have a clinical data analyst, and you have a new training principal trainer for analytics. That sounds like two people to me. So it would seem to me that they would either be extremely busy, or that they figured out a way to scale the work that they're doing across the organization. Is there a trick, or is there something about scaling that you guys have figured out?
Well, we also added a few BI developers, traditional BI developers, to that mix, one of which we have dedicated to registries, which might sound a little odd, but with the work that's happening now around our ACO model and our basically our ambulatory contracts that we have, having somebody dedicated to registries is key, because most of this stuff feeds off of registries. So getting those right people in the right positions was important. But the single biggest improvement in our ability to deliver has been our work around lean and agile. So about 2 years ago, we started going down that road. My manager, Michael Olson, has really been at the tip of the spear on this. And we've completely revamped our approach based on agile and lean methodology with 3-week sprints.
Wow. That's well, I love it when we close out a show by introducing a topic that we could do a whole show on. So we'll definitely have to have you back and talk more about that, because that sounds like a lot of people talk about lean, and a lot of people talk about agile, and I think they're, at least agile from where I sit, is one of the least understood terms within IT organizations, and it gets kind of convoluted. So. Yeah, this was a precursor for me having Lee back on the show, where we really talked a lot about data and analytics. And so you want to check out that other episode as well. It just, they've done such great things at Asante with such a small staff. It really is kind of impressive. Hey, we're getting ready to close out the episode. So we have one more clip. It's actually probably the longest clip. It's about 5 minutes, where I talked to, Dr. Daniel Kraft, the physician scientist, chair of Singularity University in Exponential Medicine. I talked to him, and this was really the start of these case study episodes. And what I threw to him was, he and I have $5 billion to redesign a new health system from scratch in Southern California. What does it look like? Does it look different given the technologies that he's tracking and the technologies that are coming into play and the changing business landscape? So It's pretty lengthy, as you would imagine. I mean, we're redesigning a $5 billion health system in Southern California, and really fascinating insights. Take a listen to this. So I'd like to do two hypotheticals with you. In the first, we're going to design a health system from scratch that we're going to launch in 2020, say in the Southern California market, and just say, hey, it's greenfield, we're starting over. And in the second scenario, I want to talk to you about, I'm going to make you the exponential consultant to Dr. Atul Gawande on this new role at JPM Amazon Berkshire, and just take a few minutes to understand how exponentials might be used in care and wellness of his 1.2 million employees that he's going to be overseeing. So let's start with this one. So we're designing something from scratch. It's going to have to integrate with what's already in our market. It's going to have to leverage the various things that are already present. But let's assume we just got $5 billion. You and I are going to start a new health system. It's in Southern California, and let's just dream a little bit on, where do we start to invest that money to provide really proactive care versus reactive care, continuous care versus intermittent sporadic care. And where would you start? Would it look completely different? Like we should be thinking about buildings and acute care facilities, or where would we start, do you think?
Well, if it's a full-on system, of course, you want to go from soup to nuts, from prevention, longevity, through diagnostics, therapy. So you can still need the acute care facility, but let's start reimagining what it would like when you might join that system, using what's here now and what's coming. Some of this is starting to bubble up. The fact that I can now go on my phone and get my Epic record from Stanford, and my Stanford doctor can see my digital exhaust from my smartphone. That's not necessarily being utilized. So imagine a system where when folks join this healthcare system, they get essentially a bit of the HLI, RAVAL type element where they get their genome done. And that information isn't just a data file. It gets synthesized into your personal health record and the one that your, let's say, a primary care doctor sees, so that when you're coming in for even your annual visit, we can look at that and help tune some of your prevention and maybe therapy. It was an interesting paper out this week from Seth Kathari, who was actually a resident with me at Mass General, looking at multiple genes for risk factors for, let's say, cardiovascular disease. So it won't be any one gene. Many diseases are multifactorial, but imagine when I'm seeing you in my clinic, I can already get a look at that genetic risk score and use that to tune whether you really need to be on a statin, or what might be your optimal prevention regimen given some of those risk factors, lifestyle. And then obviously, again, overused term, but patient engagement, the fact that hopefully everyone in your system can touch their healthcare how and when it fits them, right? If you're a millennial versus a baby boomer, you're going to interact differently with your technology and user interface than even if you have the same type 1 diabetes issue. So melding that, so it's not one size fits all, precision UI as well. So then just riffing here a little bit, when you have a patient with an issue, let's say something common like hypertension, they may now be not just with the usual once a day blood pressure device. It might be built into a watch. There's one coming out from Omron, which might squeeze your wrist, or several startups doing non-invasive, almost radar-based hypertension. So you can have essentially real-time hypertension numbers and use that in a seamless way to tune often 2 or 3 different drug classes. So building in these sort of algorithms and feedback loops that continue to learn and fit into both the prevention side and disease management. So, and that requires good user interface. It requires some smart reimbursement elements. It maybe requires you to have a bit of a digital pharmacopoeia. And our clinics like Forward and others are trying to build what's the next generation of that primary care visit look like. That's a little bit of what I would think about in terms of building a system from scratch with, on the exponential, not just building it with 2018 in mind. What kind of data elements or platforms or pipes might you need to preserve for what's likely to be here in a couple of years? 5G is rolling out in many cities, including Southern California, within the year. So what could you be doing to be thinking about 5G and 6G? Where could you be building in your platform integrated telehealth, where asynchronous or synchronous care could be used, again, across the care paradigm? So those are a few things I'd be thinking about, and not just with the lens of 2018 as well.
Wow, what a great time to be in healthcare. So much opportunity, so much change going on. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I really enjoyed making it and just reminding myself of some of the great insights from these industry leaders, these clinical leaders. One last thing, one last bit of house cleaning before we close out the episode. I've created a get feedback form. I'm going to put it right there at the top of thisweekinhealthit.com website. Would love to get your feedback. Love to hear more about what we're doing well, what we're not doing well, what you'd like to see more of, what you'd like to see less of. Already starting to get some feedback from some people, and we look forward to incorporating that into next year's episode. So, I really appreciate all of our listeners. You can obviously find this episode on thisweekinhealthit.com. The videos at thisweekinhealthit.com/video, and you can follow me at the Patient CIO. But probably more importantly, the show you can follow at This Week in HIT. And that's all for this week. So please come back every Friday for more news, information, and commentary from industry influencers. That's all for now.